talk about free will? Do I have a choice? Oh, free will. I could say blanketly that there's no such thing. But that wouldn't be complete picture, because there's the experience of free will, isn't there? Everybody has the experience of free will. You know, when I choose something off the menu for dinner that I want that night, or you know, I decide to go to this movie or watch Netflix or read a book, it appears as though I'm making choices. So on a conventional level, this is really important. On a conventional level, to say, yep, there's free will, you can choose this or this, it's all up to you, here are all your options, that doesn't cause any suffering. So it's not an issue. We don't have to dismantle the way things are. Buddha was really careful about drawing a distinction between relative or conventional truth, just the everyday stuff, and existential truth, the ultimate truth. The only time he made the statement, the only thing I have ever taught is suffering and the end of suffering. So he was not interested. There was a great philosopher? Yeah, there was one time a really great philosopher, in Indian philosopher, came to and asked him if he taught. Do you teach that there's no self? And Buddha said, no. He said, do you teach that there is a self? Buddha said, no. This is and the guy was just like confused. I guess it went back and forth a little bit, and he eventually left. And Ananda, who is his Buddha's personal assistant, said, well, of course you teach no self. Why did you tell me you didn't? And he said, because he just wanted to have more stuff to engage in his mind. He wasn't interested in alleviating suffering. Now, that's very powerful to hear. There's nothing wrong with our conventions. So yes, in your everyday life, you can say, I choose this, really I want that, you got to decide, and things like that, and it's quite all right. But let's look deeper. Let's really look at its nature. And the overhead that comes with free will is the sense of being a separate self, making choices. And that sense of self does create suffering. So free will, when you are born and you go into your family, you have no free will. You're just a little animal, basically, a little hairless thing, right? That is acting out of its impulses, right? You get picked up and taken wherever it is you have to go. You can't take care of yourself in the slightest. There's no free will there, right? As we get older, we become more and more conditioned. The sense of choices we have to make are completely conditioned by the culture and our family and all of that stuff, right? So we're not really making any choices. The conditioning gets into us deeply enough that I think I'm choosing something because I want it, but it's only my conditioning. I've never really asked. I've never really probed that. Now, as you begin to become conscious, you begin to scrutinize these things. You begin to discern between the conditioning and what's actually me. Something else takes place. There's something opens up where suddenly different choices can be made, right? Because you're now conscious. But if you look really closely at that, the different choices that are emerging are simply because there's a different sense of myself there. I'm not caught in the same patterns anymore. And you'll notice that when consciousness emerges, there's an attempt to choose always according to the highest. So it isn't really a choice anymore. You're reaching for the highest truth at all times. In the relative circumstances, I'm reaching for love over hate, right? Now, is that a free will? Well, in a sense, yes, you could choose, but nobody would choose hate who wasn't ignorant. The moment you become conscious, you can't choose it anymore. So if you really look at it all the way up to just knowing the full truth, the truth is the truth. When we submit to the truth, all of our choices are truth. All of our actions are truth, right? There's no you anymore. And so you can see really up and down the entire line, free will is just a concept. It's just an idea that's been laid on the fact that choices are being made all the time there, but nobody's really making them. That's a tough thing for us to grasp. But if you look at if you look at the actual makeup or mechanics of a choice, two ways have to go. Maybe a little debate goes on, and a choosing thought emerges. Again, it's like I said to Christmas before, you didn't create that thought. It's just a choosing thought. That choosing thought comes with, this is the way. The whole body mind starts to act accordingly. Energy begins to collect behind it. And a few thoughts later comes the thought, I chose that, which came later. You can't say I chose that before the choice is made, can you? Which means the choice just happened, and then I took credit for it later. That sense of I took credit for it later. And you really look at the whole thing really closely, you'll see it's all just happening. And even the thought that says, I did that, right, is just another thought that emerged. And that I doesn't exist. What it's referring to is just another thought. And you are the one witnessing all of those. In fact, they are all arising out of you, but not as an act of will. They're arising out of you as the self, because everything arises out of the self. Everything derives from the self. Everything is an appearance of the self, because the self alone exists. Everything else is an appearance of it. Just remember that, our experience is I'm making choices, and in everyday life you can refer to it that way. But we just decide to look a little bit deeper.